Trigger warning, I know maybe this doesn't trigger a lot of people and it's just me, but if you've had any sort of traumatic experiences from surgery or having operations or hospitals or like all that stuff just doesn't sit well with you, please don't watch this because I had a hard enough time trying to film it and relive it, and I don't want you to have to relive whatever traumatic experience you've had. Or if you get anxious by this kind of stuff, like, don't worry about it. I'm sure you'll be able to catch up later. I'll probably mention stuff here or there if you really care that much, or you can just like message me and I'll like tell you the gist. Also, I'm sorry if this video isn't very detailed or I don't explain things very well because I can't really remember exactly what happened from like 2014 on. It's just all a big blur of like a time period I don't remember and things I don't want to remember. So reliving this isn't exactly super fun, but I will try to explain it so you at least get an idea of what's going on. I'm trying to like put myself back in the situation and I don't want to be in there because that was really painful. Also, sorry if you hear background noise, my fan's on because it's like 29 degrees Celsius. Hello and welcome back to another video. Today is Tuesday, May 15th, and I will be doing my third video of my knee journey. If you are unaware, I started a series where I am talking about my knees and how they've affected me since childhood and how my anxieties played into all of that. I'm not sure exactly where I left off on my last video, but I went to see another doctor about specifically like my knee dysplasia. But I wouldn't let her touch my knees because, as you know, I was like terrified of people touching my knees. I didn't want anything to go wrong. I didn't like how they felt. So the first appointment I ever had with my knee doctor, so it was just a complete waste of time that we were even there to begin with, and she was frustrated and I was frustrated because I knew I was acting like a 4-year-old because I was like crying and freaking out, and my mother was super disappointed in me, and I totally understand why. And then we were referred to a chronic pain clinic, which is weird because I didn't have chronic pain, but I think it was just to kind of develop more of an understanding of what was going on with me since she couldn't really like touch me or do anything about that. I began to worry a lot because my knees weren't getting better. It had been like several years of physiotherapy and I worked really hard on my exercises every single day and still it didn't seem to be enough, and I knew that the next step would be surgery, and that was obviously not a thing I wanted to do. I was like 13. Like, do you really think a 13-year-old girl wants to go in for surgery? Like, that's scary as heck. So I was really worried that that would have to happen. Whether it was going to be at the same time, like for both legs, or one first and the other first, I was worried about the in-between time because obviously if it was one first, then my other leg would still be susceptible to dislocating. So like it would be off balance. But if it was both at the same time, then I'd have like zero mobility and wouldn't be able to do anything anyways, and really I was just unsure about how anything would go. The absolute worst fear hit me where I'm like, oh my god, what if I go through all this and they still don't work? Like what if it's not enough? Eventually, I got to a point where I let the doctor like touch my knees and feel what she needed to feel. There was an operation that she could do to supposedly keep my knees from dislocating, and apparently it had worked for about 80% of people, which means there was still a 20% chance that it wouldn't work out. But as my father had told me, I was to worry about it when the time comes, because obviously worrying about something that's not gonna happen and just freaking myself out for no reason is like really unnecessary. And I just had to focus on what I needed to do so nothing else would get in the way, because like that was enough. Like pretty much from whenever I found out about the operation and we like scheduled the date, I had been preparing, or at least mentally trying to. I didn't want to avoid it because I knew that if I just like didn't think about it and decided it was fine until the day comes, then I'd be surprised and like anxious, and I just like wouldn't be able to do it because it would be way too much for me. So I went to therapy appointments and figured out like my general plan of what I was gonna do. Because, you know, anxiety's a lot about the unknown, I wanted to know as much as I possibly could. I ended up also making a positivity playlist, like out of my music on my phone. So feel-good songs, happy songs, positive songs, optimistic songs, motivational songs, whatever I felt like wouldn't bring me down and would put me in a good headspace. And I listened to that a lot before the operation, and I don't really think I did so much after, and I even planned a whole big list of Disney movies or like child kind of movies that I knew wouldn't make me feel any more anxious also. I wanted to make it as easy on my future self as I possibly could. And I also made a Word document called Panic, Pain, and Recovery. Ironically though, I'm pretty sure I forgot it for the hospital, so it was more just mental, like day of, before kind of prep. Panic focused a lot more on the prep for the operation, so like for my mindset and things I could do to control my anxiety, like deep breathing or visualizations, meditation or sensory meditation where like you focus on something, quotes and affirmations, anything positive that kind of fit into either panic, pain, or recovering. Like for example, I'm gonna find one. I have to move through the pain whether I like it or not. I don't want to end up where I was last time. I can't. I have to do what I have to do, no matter how impossible it may seem. That was for pain, but it really would have worked through recovery also. Oh, and I also had like a list of benefits. Eventually the day rolled around, and if you're wondering, I'm pretty sure the day was July 17th, but I remember leading up to it, like I was preparing myself so much, but it still seemed like it wasn't really happening. It's kind of like if you tell yourself tomorrow is Christmas, even though it's like May. It's like, no, it's not Christmas tomorrow, it's May 16th tomorrow. But it really is Christmas tomorrow. It was really hard to believe because it didn't seem like it was happening. Until the day of, like the night before when I had to start preparing by like not drinking water or eating food past a certain time or something, then it was like real, and I'm like, okay, like I still didn't freak out too much because I had prepared myself, but it was just like that feeling of not being ready. Like no matter what you do, you're not going to be ready, you just kind of have to go through with it and like do it anyway. Well, I do have a hospital album, like a CD that I listen to in the car when I go to the hospital a lot, but I don't know if it was this that I listened to on the way there, but it's Feel by Sleeping with Sirens. It has like nothing to do with hospital or anything, but it's just like one that I've listened so many times on the way to or from the hospital that it's just kind of developed some sort of aesthetic. I think it was Selfish Machines by Pierce the Veil, but if not, it was definitely On the Way Home. I think it was both though. I'd prepared so much that it actually like did help day of, thankfully, because otherwise I'd be freaking out. I had a choice to be injected with the anesthetic either like in my arm through a vein or through a mask, like to breathe it in, and I just like didn't like the idea of having someone try to poke around and find a vein because my veins are tiny anyway. Like I didn't like getting needles at the best of times, and even though it was like flavored some sort of or scented or something, so it smelled differently, but it was just still, oh, I remember it so well, and I hate that I remember it, but it's like the smell of hospital, but plastic and like clean, which you think would be like a nice smell. Such a strong smell, like even if it was supposed to be, it's kind of like cough medicine, you know, like even if it's like cherry flavored, it's still disgusting, like that sort of thing. Like they told me to like count to 10 or whatever, but like by the time you get to 10 or like way before then, you'll be asleep because the stuff works really fast. And then just think happy thoughts, because if you think of something happy and a good time, you'll wake up happy. But my mom was there with me, and I know she was freaking out. She couldn't show that she was freaking out because she had to be strong for me, because I needed to not freak out so I could just do the scariest thing in the whole entire world, which really it's not, but for someone with anxiety, like for me, it was the scariest thing in the entire world. I don't want to die while I'm like being put to sleep or like never wake up or be in a coma. It's like a really weird buzzy feeling where everything just kind of fades out and like the sounds get quieter. And then I woke up and obviously didn't remember a single thing. And I just kept thanking the nurses. I'm like, thank you so much, because they were like taking such good care of me. Obviously like that's their job to make sure I'm okay, but I'm like, thank you. I really appreciate it, like thank you, like, you know, when you're like half stoned, because I was on obviously like pain medication and wearing off of the anesthetic, so I was like not really awake. I remember going back up to my room in the elevator. It was really weird because like I was obviously on the bed like flat down. Yeah, I couldn't like see anything but the ceiling, so I was facing up, and I just remembered like watching all the bright lights, and it like freaked me out because everything was moving really fast and I was already kind of like dizzy, and I'm like, whoa, like this is a lot. So I didn't need anything to distract me at all. There was something like in my leg that was giving me pain meds, and then there's just like the other meds that were either going in my like IV or like I would take them. Well, I couldn't swallow pills, so I know that I had to take like Tylenol and Advil, like switch like every 4 hours or something. I don't remember how often it was. and I was on morphine. Like, there was a TV in the room, and I think there was a little microwave or something, or if not, it was just like down the hall, and like a sink, and a bathroom. Like, I had my own private room. There was a TV. I feel like I turned it on for a split second to try to find something to watch, but like, it was like too much movement, and it was like electronic, so it was even more distorted and really weird. My mom and aunt were staying there to look after me because, like, you know, I wouldn't let them leave with the whole separation anxiety thing between my mom, and then plus, like, we needed somebody else there who I trusted enough to handle, like, the whole leg moving and stuff. Oh, that was a time. And like, I couldn't do anything but sleep, but I couldn't really sleep either because, fun fact, I was having hallucinations, which I don't know if that started right away, but like, it was kinesthetic hallucinations, so like I felt like I was moving, and like visual, but when my eyes were closed. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like, almost as if I was going to drift off into a dream, but I wasn't sleeping because I could feel it moving. Like, you know that feeling when you're like just about falling asleep, but you feel yourself like physically falling? It was kind of like that, except it was like my bed was being moved, and like there were people in the room, and I could like hear people talking that weren't really there, so I guess it was auditory too, but it was just all like really messed up. So I kept waking up like every 15 seconds. That was tough because I couldn't like sleep very well, and plus there was a machine, like my breathing machine thing, that kept beeping every so often because like I have asthma, so I don't really breathe very well to begin with, but my breathing really like slows down and shallows out when I'm about to fall asleep, so anytime it would start beeping, it would like wake me up, even though I wasn't like sleepy yet, but you know, like to that close kind of point, and it would like jolt me awake, and I'd like have to deep breathe again, and then I just go through that cycle over and over and over again, so I really didn't get the sleep that I needed to recover very well at all. And plus I was just like so, what's the word, drowsy, I guess, where I couldn't do anything, and like literally I only had energy to stare at the wall. Like, just staying awake was hard enough, let alone being stimulated by something like music or reading. Like, no, I could not do that at all. I had a big Zimmer, which, if you're unaware, it's like a long leg brace, and it keeps the leg straight because I couldn't have my knee bent for like, I don't know, a week or 10 days or something afterwards. I'll probably insert a picture if I can find one here. With Velcro, white Velcro that went through little loopy things, and it stuck so well that it was too well, and we couldn't get it off for any period of time. Not that we had to get it off until a few days in, when we needed to change it and like clean out my leg because obviously it was starting to smell from being sweaty and gross. The numbness though, it just felt so weird, like, because I knew my leg was there, I could see my leg there, but when I touched it, which was probably later on, because, you know, why would I touch it if it hurts? But it hurt inside, not on the outside. Like, I could feel the pain inside. It was like a bone pain. I felt it on the inside of my leg, but I felt the outside of my leg, and it felt like it wasn't my leg. Like I was touching somebody else's leg, because my leg couldn't feel it. I could feel my skin of my knee on my hand as I was touching it, but I couldn't feel my actual leg because, like, the skin around it was all numb. I do remember something about the operation, which is that it included screws. So I have surgical screws in my leg to like screw pieces of bone together to try, and like tendon to try to hold it where it needed to be. But anytime I did need to get up or move a little bit anyway, like, it was a long process, like at least probably 45 minutes long of a process to move like 3 feet. And I wasn't like standing either, like just move off the bed, like move my butt over, you know. Someone had to hold my leg, and you know, I was so freaked out beforehand about people touching my knee that now it was like straight, and if something had moved wrong it would really hurt and everything would go wrong, like physically. So it just added the pressure and like raised my anxiety so much. I know we had nurses help and my mom and my aunt to grab my leg or have like support it underneath so I could move like with my hand, and then they'd turn my leg at the same time, or like with my hands like move my butt. But I was just so weak because of the drugs. Like, I didn't have the energy to move that much, which doesn't seem like a lot. It is when you just come out of surgery and you like can't really think or see or feel. Eventually though, therapy came around, physiotherapy, physical therapy. You know, I've been used to that for however many years, although it's definitely not at all the same thing. Just learning how to stand and walk and move and have my leg on a different surface other than the bed was, it was hell. Sorry, getting like flashbacks. This is terrible. Trying to like put myself back in the situation, and I don't want to be in there because that was really painful. I had to have my leg on the floor. I mean, the bed was lowered, you know, it was turned. Slowly lowered my leg and had to get it to the point where I could rest it on the floor, but it hurt so much because I couldn't move my foot at all because, well, you know, I didn't freaking know how. I had this giant thing on my leg. All this weight of the heavy Zimmer was weighing down my leg, and like my hip was weak because like I don't have any muscle to begin with, but I had to learn how to use my hip muscle essentially to move my leg, and that didn't happen fast. I will insert some pictures of me or of like whatever was happening in my first operation here. I think the expected recovery time, full recovery time for this operation was 8 weeks, and let me tell you, it took a hell of a lot longer than 8 weeks for me because I am so slow, and anxiety makes it so much harder. It makes me so much slower, and I had to stand with a walker. That was like my first mission, but I couldn't even like sit off the side of the bed, and it began throbbing, and there were cords from the IV and everything connected to me as I was trying to move, so that didn't make it any easier. So like when I was pushing down with my hand, I had like the needle thing, IV thing, or whatever it was on my hand, like pushing into my skin, and like you couldn't really feel like the needle moving around or anything, but like it wasn't comfortable. So it was just all these different factors that made it really hard to like move around. So I basically had to rely on my right knee because I guess I failed to mention this, but it was the left knee that was being operated on, which was the first one to ever dislocate and the one that had more problems and was weaker overall. I was scared to death because it's not like I could do any sort of physio or moving around or like helping this muscle stay strong of my right leg. This was probably like 2 or 3 days in, by the way. Like none of this happened fast at all. I think what I had to do, my brain told me I had to do, was have my right leg bent while my left one was straight. Which, if you can imagine, that's really awkward. I had to have my right leg bent as I was holding onto the walker because, if you remember to my last video, I didn't straight walk like ever. Like I didn't get to the point where I could properly walk. My legs were bent. Luckily the nurses were kind enough to help me through it however I needed to be helped. Basically me and my mom and my aunt just kind of lived in the hospital. Shout out to them honestly for sticking through and dealing with my aggressive complaints of pain and like anxiety. Like I don't know how the heck they did it because like I barely did it. I don't know how I did it either. Like wow. Really it was 5 days, but it just felt like it all blended together, and like had no idea how long you were really in there because it was just forever and constant and it never ever ended. So that was great. Until it ended and I came home. Can you just like imagine for a minute like a 15-minute process of getting in the car when normally it takes you about like 4 seconds to hop in the car. So I wouldn't be able to sit in the passenger side, obviously, because like there wasn't enough room for my leg, and having it down for longer than like, I don't know, 5 seconds was excruciatingly painful. I had to go in through a multitude of steps. I don't know, I think I got off the wheelchair, onto a stool, up onto a larger stool, up onto the car, to the back seat, where then there were a huge stack of pillows and a cooler and things for my leg to rest on for the drive home. And I'm pretty sure it was the back seat because I know that was a lot easier to get in and out of. There was throbbing, which made it very hard for when the physio thing came around and like knee bending was a thing. Start bending it a little bit, like there was only a certain degree that I could bend it up to at times, but I never actually got to the point where I was supposed to. Surprise, surprise, because it scared me too much, so I had to do it in teeny tiny little increments. And taking the Zimmer off, like you'd think it would feel better, but when it was like velcroed on, it was like tight, so it, you know, held everything in there. And then when it was off, it felt loose and too loose, and I was scared that my knee was just gonna like twitch up excessively. It just got real bad. So I was scared because it was loose and it felt too fragile. Like anything bad could happen at any sort of moment. And when it wasn't like tightly on there, it had the room to throb, if that makes any sense. 10 days after, it was time to take the tape off. But like even if you put tape on your skin, you can like feel the skin peeling up. And like even though the skin was kind of numb, I could still feel it like in the scar incision. So if you just imagine like pulling like a scar, like a pretty new, fresh scar. Like, it's disgusting. Gross warning. Discoloration. It's all kind of like yellowy and splotchy because of the numbing. And oh yeah, and then my foot would swell and my feet would do this thing where they were like really, really cold but sweaty. So it had to be layered, like elevated. My mother was going through a lot. She put up with way more than like you should, or any mother should, or would probably. Because I was so extra. I was literally like a 4-year-old child. But like even as a 4-year-old child, you could do things for them, but you could only do so much for me because my problem was inside my brain. Oh, I forgot to mention also, I thought the hospital was great. Like people were really, really nice. There were nice nurses that like took care of me. I was so thankful for them. The food was great. Like if it was like mid-July, then now we're at September. Slow recovery. I can walk a little bit with my walker and move with my, like, pull my hip up and move my leg forward because I'm still too scared to have my knee, like, bent fully or bent while I'm moving or walk like a normal person. So I ended up being dependent on my aunt also and mom again, still. I couldn't do online school because my anxiety was bad enough that I needed that social exposure to get me somewhere, even though I pretty much completely isolated myself because I was way too embarrassed with my whole situation, but no one like judged me for it. My first year of high school was spent with me in a wheelchair, and it wasn't like a fancy motorized wheelchair that I could like control stuff with because my legs still had to be out straight. So I needed like the wheelchair with like the leg lift things, or one of them was straight anyway. You'll never believe it, but my mom and aunt spent all day pushing me from class to class because my school is just so great. Like, could I have picked a school that didn't have ramps on both floors and 2 floors? You'd think, right? But no, the ramps were hard. I couldn't push myself up the ramp, and like down the ramp I couldn't do that either because like it was too fast and I couldn't stop myself, and like I didn't have the arm muscle, so I couldn't be independent. And plus like I couldn't go to the bathroom on my own either because I'd have to transfer from the wheelchair to the toilet. So like that was our main thing holding me back from not being able to be independent at all. And I just didn't really make friends. Like I had a single friend from middle school, but we weren't like close friends. I kind of went into this downward spiral of like no self-confidence and completely isolating myself and like not talking to people. There's first of all already so many people and like everything's new for high school, but then it's just like the wheelchair me. Like I was so concerned about being the wheelchair kid, like the handicapped kid. Like who would want to be friends with me? Like I have so many problems. Like it wasn't the wheelchair stopping me from making friends, it was my brain, because I just had assumed that like no one would want to be friends with me. Other people might have been fine with it, but like I was judging myself and I wasn't okay with it. I just felt so weak and helpless. Like we still had checkups and like I know you just kind of have to do what you have to do, but like I couldn't do it. Like anxiety literally paralyzed me again. Like there was the bent knee thing and then there was this thing, and I like said that I couldn't let that happen, and I really wasn't trying to. Like I wanted so bad to do everything in my power to get somewhere, but like I just could not. I'll leave you here. We'll continue to the next operation. Thank you for watching. See you later. Bye-bye.